second. So working with the breath is it's a big old package, right? There's lots of ways that we can kind of narrow our focus as we learn to breathe well. And I'm going to do a little sharing of my anatomy app in just a moment. But basically, what we're going to focus on today a little bit is the work of the diaphragm and how the diaphragm is needed for healthy breathing. And in one of the best, not one of the best, one of the most common alterations in healthy breathing patterns that we see today is like a reverse pattern or a chest breathing pattern of breathing, where we tend to move our diaphragm up when we're inhaling and drop our diaphragm down when we're exhaling. So this kind of breath, and I'm exaggerating, but just even subtly, that feeling of rising up as we inhale and dropping down as we exhale. And when we do chest breathing like this, we have a lot of strain and tension in the accessory muscles of breathing, in our neck, our scalenes, and our traps. And we can get very tense and have a lot of chronic tension in those areas of our body. And many of us do this. It's a very habituated pattern for a lot of us to reverse our diaphragm and to have it be lifting up into the chest while we're inhaling. So the diaphragm is this dome-shaped muscle. I know you guys know this, but just a little review. That is, when we inhale, it should flatten and go down. And when we exhale, it should rise up. So I'm going to share my anatomy app here. Hold on. I had a whole bunch of stuff thrown in here when I was looking at it before. So let me, I'll leave the lungs in there, the lungs and the heart. I kind of removed some things. So when I was looking at it before, I forgot to return it back to the full thing. But this is your diaphragm here. So it's a big dome-shaped muscle in the body, and it takes up the whole circumference of your torso. It attaches onto the bottom ribs here, as well as the cartilage for these upper ribs. And it has this, I don't know if you can see this well. Let me remove the arterial supply just for a minute so we get the vertebrae very visible. So this ligament, actually it's tendon, it's the tendon of the diaphragm, slides down here. It's called the crura, and it attaches onto the lumbar spine. And here's the second piece of it here too. So not only do you have the attachments on the ribs, but you have attachments on the vertebrae. And then this fascial sheath, let me remove the lungs for a moment. This fascial sheath up here, the white part, kind of fascially connects to the pericardial sac around the heart. So it kind of gathers up, look at me for a moment, it gathers up and then wraps around the heart. It doesn't have an actual ligament or tendon attachment, but it has a fascial connection that wraps around the pericardial sac. So we have these beautiful ways that the diaphragm is rigged in our body to support a lot of different things. So when this muscle, see how big of a dome it is? This is when it's after your exhale, this is what it looks like. And when we inhale, I wish I had a mobile, moving app here, but it drops down and flattens out, and it pushes our organs out of the way. So this is why our bellies move when we breathe, not because air is going into our belly. And we don't want to force our bellies out. That's not the goal here, but it's just to allow the diaphragm to move. And why do we want the diaphragm to move? When the diaphragm flattens down, the capacity in our lungs becomes low pressure, and air just flows right in. And then when the diaphragm pushes back up into this dome shape, it puts pressure on the lungs and the air flows out. So it's just this natural gradient of energy flow, pressure gradients really, that allow our breath to move in our body. So there's very little we have to do to try to pull the breath in, but there are some things we can do to help us breathe properly. So we want our diaphragm to be the primary mover of our pose. And then these muscles that go in between the ribs, along with a bunch of other muscles, are very much in charge in helping our very elastic bones. These rib bones are so bendy, right? They're our most bendy bones. And if we can get a lot of fluidity and mobility in the muscles that attach one rib to the next, the intercostal muscles, we can get a lot of flow in the movement of our rib cage. So we want the ribs to move. We don't want just the diaphragm to move. The diaphragm is responsible for moving the air in and out. Our ribs are responsible for creating the space. So we don't want to have fixed ribs. We don't want to have locked diaphragms. We want everything to be very mobile. And then I just want to turn this guy around for a moment and just see how many little tiny muscles attach onto the rib cage. I'm going to add, I'm not going to go into all of them, but I'll just add a few that you can see. There's a lot of layers, these in particular, that can, when they contract, they pull the ribs apart. And then there's other muscles that help the rib cage flow back together. So I'm going to stop screen share now so that you don't have to, be subjected to my love of anatomy more than you have to. But it's just a sense of really knowing that this diaphragm is a huge muscle in our bodies. And if we can learn to regulate its rhythm. Oh, I forgot to show you one thing. I'm not going to go back up there, but what I wanted to show you was that the diaphragm and the psoas, the deep abdominal muscle that flexes your spine and then stabilizes your spine, the attachments for the diaphragm and the psoas on the vertebrae are so close to each other, and they really speak to one another. So when we are in a stress state, and it can be a subtle stress state, it doesn't have to be like, oh my God, freak out kind of stress state. It can just be the subtle things that you got something in your mind that's bothering you, or you got a lot going on in your day. We can have a lot of tension that builds up because the nervous system responds a lot to these two muscles. So try this for a moment. Wherever you're sitting, grip your toes for a minute, like curl your feet in, and notice when you tense your feet, if your diaphragm just kicked in a notch, if it kicked up a notch of tension. And then do the same with your hands. Make fists and see if your diaphragm kind of clenches a little bit. So anytime we are at the ready, when our nervous system has a cue that, oh, I might have to fight or flight here, the diaphragm responds just as quickly as a little bit of tension of curling our toes or curling our fingers or stretching our necks. Our diaphragm is ready to go. So we often can hold a lot of unconscious tension in this part of our body. And that's just the physicality. The emotionality, a lot of times we are told to suck it in. If you carry extra weight in your belly, you can be very self-conscious about that. And there's a lot of drawing in of the abdomen. And we're told, suck it in, suck it in. And there's this tension pattern that can arise from wearing tight bras, tight belts, tight ties, tight clothes, holding ourselves in. This can really mess with our ability to let these muscles that we need to flow and move in their proper way. So we can restrict a lot of our breathing by the way we think and by the way we feel in our bodies. So we're going to unlock a little bit of this today. We're going to work a little bit with the diaphragm. And just know that, when we do have that pattern of the reverse flow, where we're chest breathers, where we tend to rise up and breathe high, this is a huge contributor to neck and shoulder tension. And there's been studies that, people who type on the minute you put your fingers on a keyboard, that tension pattern can start to creep in. So one of the best things you can do throughout your day, not just in your yoga practice, but when you know that you're doing something that's going to stress you, putting your hands on a steering wheel, putting your hands on a keyboard, having a difficult conversation, to take a moment before to just allow some deep diaphragmatic breathing to happen, so that you're cued in to what the diaphragm feels like, so that you can consciously let go and kind of counteract some of those habituated patterns that were unconscious in us. Our breathing patterns develop unconsciously. And so to change them, we need to do a lot of consciousness to develop a different rhythm of our breath. And you'll find that, you're going along, you have a good breathing pattern, and then something stresses you out, and all of a sudden you go right back to the chest breathing, right? So it's something that we're going to work with our whole lives. This is not something that you can, when you go class, you can be like, oh yeah, got that, fixed it, no problem. It's an ongoing process of working with the breath. So we're going to just do a lot of diaphragmatic exploration today. Okay, so find a comfortable seat. We're gonna play with this in lots of planes: supine, prone, standing, sitting. So just take a moment to make sure you're comfortable. So let's move a little bit, because you've already been sitting for a few minutes listening to me gawk about anatomy. So allow yourself to first round the spine. So we're gonna do like a little seated cat-cow. So roll forward, roll back. One of the best things we can do to free up our ribs is to free up the muscles that bind us in our spines, in our backs, in our rib cage. So cat-cow is a beautiful way to loosen up some of the muscles in our thoracic spine and in our ribs. So just going back and forth, tucking the chin toward the chest, and then lifting the chin away. All right, and then shrug your shoulders a few times. You can shrug them up and roll them back. And then maybe you can go the other direction and do some movement patterns here where you have just some spinal movement. And then put one hand on the ground and stretch your arm up and over, just getting your rib cage to awaken a little bit before we sit for a moment and explore our diaphragm. You can go back and forth a couple of times. Okay, all right, and then relax. And notice it's just a little bit of movement. We didn't do very much, the littlest bit, if it's really impacted your ability to feel in your body. So find your grounding and notice your breath. Can you sense? It's so hard to notice the natural breath. It's so hard to notice natural breath. The minute we peak, our body changes something. So do what you can to observe a natural breath in your body. How is your habit today? Might be different at different times. Are you a chest breather? Do you breathe high? Can you feel the muscles around your neck and shoulders, your scalenes and your traps start to want to do the work? How about your diaphragm? Can you feel into it? Can you feel and then visualize, imagine the dome? And on your inhale, can you imagine that dome flattening out, broadening, the bottom ribs are expanding? And then on your exhale, that dome traveling back up. Okay, so just find the wave. This is like an ocean wave of riding the tide of the breath. It's very easy for us to go back into a reverse pattern of chest breathing. So let's just see if we can find the movement that we want to cultivate in our diaphragm now. Try not to restrict your breathing to just be at your diaphragm. It's the movement, it's the powerhouse of your breath, but your lungs expand all around, front, back, sides, top, bottom. Can you feel the pelvic floor? Can you feel the organs that are displaced? Your diaphragm sits on top of all of your organs. So when you drop that diaphragm down, your liver, your spleen, your pancreas, your small intestine, your large intestine, your kidneys, everything's below there. So there's a lot of massage and movement that your diaphragm gives to your organs. See if you can let the organs release into space. So expanding outward, downward, backward, every which way. And then a little subtlety of our exhales too. Because remember, we're just talking about the the anatomy of breathing, but the mechanics of breathing to help us be relaxed is to breathe through the nose, inhaling and exhaling as much as you can, and to slow the exhales down. So when we slow the exhales down, we have that, eccentric contraction of the diaphragm, and it can be assisted by the belly muscles, the transverse abdominis. So let's try a whoo breath. So you can actually just blow out like, or you can say the word whoo, whatever is going to help you. On the inhale, try not to chest breathe. Let the diaphragm move down and broad. And on the exhale, can you feel the abdominal strength kick in just a little bit? It doesn't have to be extreme to help you move the diaphragm back in and up, slow and steady. Slow things down. Rebound with a good inhale. See if you can isolate the TA from all the other muscles that want to tense and grip to control the breath. It's very difficult to do. Let this be relaxed. There's no, this is like 20% of your effort max. You want not very much work to be happening here, just an awareness of the symphony of these muscles working together. All right, let's place our hands on our belly and just be mindful. What is your relationship with your belly? Do you shun, hide, look away? Do you befriend? And is that kind of a state of the way you look? Or do you have deeper challenges in your belly? Do you have some gut health issues? What kind of relationship do you have with the center of you? Can you befriend? Can you be compassionate? Can you be kind? Can you feel? Can you let your body feel and listen to what you're feeling? Intuition, trust, it all lives here. All right, and then let's go ahead and release our hands and come onto our back. Okay, so find your way onto your mat. And lie down, knees bent, feet on the floor. Actually, let's just warm up our bodies a little bit before we feel the breath here. So stretch your limbs out, starfish yourself, wiggle fingers and toes. Exhale, knees in, chin in. And a couple of times. Can you feel how expansive your body can get? Can you feel that sense of the core helping the breath out? One more time. So one of the first things that we need to do is just learn our patterns, learn our emotional patterns, our physical patterns, our mental patterns in relation to our breath. Let's go ahead and put our feet down onto the ground. Windshield wiper your knees left and right. So it's never a waste of time to sit and feel your breath. It's never a waste of time. The more we can access healthy breathing patterns, it impacts so much of our general health, our cardiovascular health, our mental health, our nervous system health. Everything is impacted, our digestive health, everything is impacted by good, healthy breathing. Okay, let's bring the right knee into the chest, left leg long, just feel that good squeeze. Feel free to move your feet around and change sides. All right, and then bring your knees in and let's open your knees up and feel your hip joints a little bit. Just see what's available in range of motion. Try not to go extreme. And then go ahead and put your feet on the ground. We're going to also relate the diaphragm to the pelvic floor. So let's just do a little pelvic floor movement here. So as you inhale, widen the sit bones, anterior tilt the pelvis. So lift the top of your sacrum, tip your tailbone toward the floor. And then as you exhale, draw the pelvic floor in and up. The sit bones move toward each other. A slight posterior tilt to the pelvis, not a butt cheek clencher. Okay, so we're not going into extreme range of motions here. We want to let the smaller muscles be where we're activating and becoming aware instead of our strong glutes and inner thigh muscles that, just like to take over. They're strong. So let's give them a little bit of break. This is a very subtle movement of inhaling into anterior tilts, sit bones wide, nutation of the sacrum, exhaling into a slight posterior tilt, counter nutation of the sacrum, pelvic floor lifts. So remember, when we're working with the pelvic floor muscles, imagine the effort of lifting a tissue out of a tissue box. So we're not lifting weights with our pelvic floor. It's a subtlety. It's a very gentle movement pattern. So you can keep rocking through the pelvis, especially if this feels good for your back. Or you can kind of slow down that movement and just start to feel now the breath. So as we inhale, can you feel the diaphragm, the actual diaphragm, broaden out? It's a different plane now. Supine feels different than sitting up. And can you feel the pelvic floor broaden? Imagine the two diaphragms are the same. They They dome up on our exhale and they flatten and widen out on our inhales. So match those two diaphragms. They're both broadening out on the inhale. Belly expands a bit, letting the organs move. Exhale, a little bit of transverse abdominis, a little bit of pelvic floor, tissue box, lifting a tissue, draw it in. So let's add into this slight subtle movement pattern the who breath on the exhale. So exhaling with a little bit of, so you can feel the transverse abdominis, that deep corset muscle that wraps around your belly, and it holds your organs in. So first we're releasing it so our organs can expand out, and then we're condensing it so our organs can draw in. So see if you can find the symphony of these movement patterns. And now let's add the last final diaphragm in our throat, the Jalandhara Bandha. So as we inhale, the vocal cords expand away from each other. And as we feel that breath, can you feel the vocal cords move toward each other and vibrate? So all three diaphragms are opening and expanding as we inhale, and all three diaphragms are closing and condensing as we exhale. And you can experiment with moving the pelvis. You can experiment with the who breath. You can experiment with maybe some humming on the exhale, anything to vibrate your vocal cords. And you can be very still and not move at all and just let the subtlety of the movement happen on its own. So just explore. Can you notice that your breath is a symphony in your body? And that's just the mechanics of your muscles. The symphony that's happening in your sinuses is also amazing. I'm not going to get into all that happens in your sinuses with your nasal breathing today, but just know that breathing through your nose is this magical thing that happens and has a lot of impact on the health of getting oxygen to your cells properly, and keeping your lungs in a healthy state. So let's just a couple more breaths here. Feeling the diaphragm move. Can you feel the rib cage? Let it move. So we're not trying to restrict anything. We want mobility and motion on our inhales. We want mobility and motion on our exhales. We want the main muscle motivator to be the diaphragm. It's our engine. It's our workhorse. But it's not the only thing that moves. Okay, and then stop all that for a moment, and we're just going to practice just a couple of breaths of the reverse pattern so you can feel what it does. So if we're going to be a chest breather, let's try to reverse the flow of our diaphragm. So instead of letting it drop down and wide on the inhale, see if you can consciously pull your diaphragm up as you take a deep breath. You'll probably notice that your lungs inflate like a big old, your rib cage inflates like a big old balloon, and there's actually extra tension, like you're going to burst in your lungs or in your ribs. And this is because the pressure has to go somewhere. If we're going to breathe in, we need less pressure in the lungs. So the pressure has to go somewhere. So if we're not moving our diaphragm properly and we're not moving our belly properly or our pelvic floor properly, the breath has to go somewhere, and we create a lot of tension. So as you do this breath, notice if there's tension in your neck and shoulders. All right, and then maybe take one more of this chest breathing, reverse breath pattern. I don't want to integrate it too much after we've done all this beautiful breathing. And then just relax for a moment and just notice what happened to your back, to your shoulders, to your neck when you had that excessive chest breathing. And return for just a couple more breaths before we start moving into that state of trying to feel the diaphragms again. So get rid of that chest breathing imprint and find the diaphragm flowing down and wide. The chest expands, the whole chest expands, the top ribs expand too, but it's not this forceful, like pumping up a balloon or pumping up a bike tire till it's fullest spot. We want some mobility. So, you know how when you put a little less pressure in your tires, there's a little more bounce in the tires. That's what we want for our ribs. Okay, now let's get moving. So spread your limbs wide, wiggle your toes again, knees into the chest. Okay, roll over onto your side and come up onto your hands and your knees. And if we're trying to get some of that mobility to happen in the diaphragm, we can work with the muscles of the spine. So let's start with some cat-cows. Feel the fullness of flexion and extension in your spine. Getting a mobile spine will help get mobile ribs. Getting mobile ribs will help get deeper, better breaths. So know that everything's connected. If we're real rigid in our spine, we are not going to breathe well. If we're real rigid in our belly and diaphragm, we're not going to breathe well. So motion is lotion. You know, we want things to be lubricated. Okay, so spin this pose around, take it for a ride, anything you want. So you can move your pelvis, do some circles, you can move your hips, sway from side to side, start to befriend the full range of motion you have available to you. And then before we get going, relax, come onto all fours now with a straight back tabletop and relax your belly, let it fall. And notice this might be so hard to do, right? Do you have difficulty letting everything release? And there's so many layers of release that can happen in the belly. So just know if your pattern is very much a tense belly pattern, one of the best things you can do is to create mobility in your abdomen for your breath. All right, let's find a twist. Inhale, reach one arm up in the air. Exhale and slide that shoulder down. Gaze toward the floor. Feel any amount of work you want in this pose. So if you want to press the hand a little deeper into the floor, be mindful whenever you're using leverage for a twist. Make sure your breath is taking you where you're going. Expand all those muscles in the back side of the rib cage. And then inhale, reach that arm all the way up to the sky. Place the hand down onto the ground. Change sides, arm up. Exhale, slide arm through. Gaze toward the floor. Breathe well. See where the breath takes you. What kind of mobility is available with your diaphragm, with your belly, with all the ribs expanding? All right, great. And then come up, reach that arm to the sky one more time, and stretch back towards child's pose. Let your back relax. Sometimes working in the way we did, kind of contracting the TA, can give you a little tension if you're not used to it. So feel free to wiggle through your spine if you need it. Walk the hands over to one side of your mat and feel those intercostal muscles, those little muscles between your ribs. See if you can feel them open. Enjoy your plasticity. We have this beautiful bounce. Our rib cage are our most green bones. So see if you can feel into that pliability as you breathe. And then walk your hands over to the other side. Feel the rib cage expand. Know that there's fascial planes here that you're opening, not just little tiny muscles. There's so much involved with keeping the rib cage broad and free. Okay, relax. Come back to center. Hands down, curl toes under, and find your way to dog pose. So feel free to pedal out your feet, to bounce, to sway, to do any kind of movement that is going to awaken. Now we have a full body pose. See what it feels like. Maybe you want to pedal your feet fast. Maybe you want to pedal your feet slow. Maybe you don't want to pedal at all. Just let your body wake. Maybe bend a knee, anything that feels good. All right, then once you're steady here, let your knees bend as much as you need to. Notice your head and your chest are below your diaphragm now. So see what it feels like when you reverse gravity. Can you feel how the exhale, that redoming, where the diaphragm redomes back up into the lung fields? Is it easier to have a complete full exhale because gravity is moving our diaphragm in that direction? When you inhale, what's available? Can your ribs move? Can your diaphragm move? Can your organs move? Can you feel it in your pelvic floor? Can you relax your neck and shoulders? And then walk your feet forward and come into Uttanasana, fold in half, shimmy, shake, anything that feels good. Have some blocks. Inhale for a halfway lift. Feel the anterior tilt of the pelvis. The sit bones lift up. The knees can bend as much as you want. Feel the extension, that axial extension of the spine. The long spine gives us room. All right, and then relax and bend your knees again. Rise all the way up. Come up to stand, finding your breath. And as you come up, let's just freeze things up. Let's just spin a little bit from side to side. Let all the attachments where your ribs meet your spine in the back. See if you can just get a little mobility. Breathe. Open up your chest. All right, and then take a deep breath in. Lean back a little bit, let the chest rise, cactus, open your arms, stretch across your pecs, and then exhale and round, stretch across the back of the body. Rise up, grab your left arm with your right hand and extend over. You can have your feet as wide apart as you need to so that you have a stable, grounded base, rooting to rise. And then come back to center and switch sides. Try not to just pull on your shoulder joint. See if you can sense the fascial attachment from the bottom rib cage to your hand. How's the base of support? How's your pelvis, your knees, your feet? And then come back up. Cactus, open your chest again. And then release. Shake out your hands. And we're going to do a little tapping. So, we've done this before. You can take like ice cream scoops with your hands. That's what I always said when I taught kids how to swim. They were like little scoops. Or you can tap with your fingers, or you can tap with flatter hands. So experiment. You can tap with fists, the thumb side of your fist. So experiment with where you want to tap. And we're going to get our back of our ribs. And feel free to get in the back, the low back as well. It doesn't just have to be on rib cage. You can go all the way down to your sacrum if you want. Just find where you can go. Okay, you can even tap your belly. And then get up top, get all across the top of the lungs, maybe the tops of the shoulders, whatever. If we were in class together, I'd have you guys partnering up and doing this to each other. So tap your lungs. All right, and then pause here for a moment. Let's put those diaphragms together in a standing plane now. What does it feel like to have your diaphragm drop down toward the pelvis, broaden out, the pelvic floor drops down and broadens out on our inhale? Can you feel it drop all the way to the soles of the feet? This is part of that yielding of giving yourself to the earth. And then our exhales, we regather the tissue pulling up from your tissue box, the actual diaphragm coming back up, floating under the rib cage. It's not anything forceful. We don't have to pull our exhales in and up. It happens quite naturally if we take away the barriers to it. Maybe try a who breath. See what's available to you. Do you have trouble transitioning from exhale to inhale? Do you have trouble transitioning from inhale to exhale? What is that bump in the road for you? Is it seamless? Is it smooth? Is it choppy? Is it like a jump that you have to kind of leap over? What's available in the rhythm of breath for you? Soles of the feet. Feel the soles of your feet in their connection to your diaphragm. Soften your knees. Yield your body. All your ribs are moving. On the inhale and the exhale, try to relax your neck and shoulders. Notice how different than this feels than a chest breathing vibe where we, just lift our chest and pull our neck and shoulders. Don't do it. I don't want to return to that pattern, but we all know that feeling. All right, let's turn this into movement. Inhale, rise up, reaching the arms. Exhale, float forward. Bend your knees a lot. Inhale for a halfway lift, spinal extension. Sit bones high and wide. Exhale, bend your knees and float. Step your left foot back, right foot comes forward, finding a lunge on this side. Start moving in our warm-up that we often do, moving with breath. Okay, so opening up the psoas now. Remember that connection between the psoas and the diaphragm. So as you stretch open the hip flexors of that leg, can you feel those attachments on your lumbar spine? What can you sense into in the body? You know, where is it easy to sense? Where do you have to go searching, kind of bushwhacking a little bit to find sensation? And the more we give ourselves the opportunity to feel, the better, the more skillful we get at feeling the inner body. Stay in your lunge now, support yourself. Put your legs where you want them to be to come up for crescent lunge. Sometimes when we lift our arms all the way up, we tend to push our ribs out in the front and compress our ribs in the back. Try to have a full cylinder. Remember that picture of the diaphragm, that it takes up the whole inner rim of your rib cage. See if you can feel the whole expansive rib cage instead of just the low bottom ribs popping out. So you might want to change your arm position. Try something different that might give you better expansion in your lungs. Better capacity to move your diaphragm down and wide. Let your organs receive. Feel the who breath on the exhales to give the diaphragm back to the rib cage or back to the lung space. All right, wherever your arms ended up, let's bring them down forward. Walk your back foot forward, fold, bend your knees, relax your head. Inhale, halfway lift, sit bones high and wide. Exhale and melt back down. Switch sides, take your other foot back. Left foot is forward, right foot is back, lunging. Move with breath. Start to feel into the hip flexors of that back leg and how they invite a relationship with the diaphragm. Breathe well. Are you breathing through your nose? Can you have that little hint of the who breath on the exhale to help you use your muscles properly? Are you able to expand your diaphragms on your inhale? It's a lot to think about, right? So if you're like, this is way too much, then just choose one thing. I'm going to focus on my diaphragms today, the movement, or I'm going to only focus on what my breathing's doing. So it's okay to kind of focus on one thing. If it gets overwhelming to try to feel a lot of things at once, come up into crescent lunge, put your arms in wherever is going to give your full torso, your whole thoracic area, what's going to give it space everywhere best. What position of your arms gives your lungs the best chance to inflate and bring oxygen in and to bring carbon dioxide out? Feel that exchange. Can you have just a little bit of the, use your core. It doesn't have to be a gargantuan on your core strength, but know that your core is there to support your spine. A supported spine means your rib cage is more pliable. You want to have mobility and strength supporting you, both. You want both. You want mobility and strength. All right, let's release our hands down onto the ground. Step back to dog pose. Extending through the spine again. Enjoy gravity helping your exhales. Maybe try taking your feet wide on the mat. And notice when you take your legs wider, is it easier to breathe all the way to the low pelvis? Do you have more capacity for your organs to move a little bit, to feel that connection to the pelvic floor as you breathe? Make room for breath. Always make room for breath. It's our primary thing that, we could forget about all the other asana and just work with the breath, and we'd probably be healthier for it. So our breath is such an important piece of our well-being, mentally and physically. Come forward into a plank. Now, sometimes when you have to engage more core support for stability and structure, it's hard to let it go a little bit and let the breath happen, the inhale happen with a little bit of mobility. So what can you do to feel the rib cage and the diaphragm still moving on the inhale and then recondense to that midline on the exhale? The transverse abdominis can't fully release because you're supporting yourself with it, but have a little bit of mobility built into the plank. Where is the breath able to go? We want to stay away from that need to have the breath go up into the neck and shoulders. Let's go ahead and come down onto our belly. And put your hands underneath your forehead for a moment. If you are not comfortable, if your back hurts and you need a little support, stick a blanket under your pelvis for a moment. So, you know, it can look like this, where you just have a blanket right underneath your pelvis. And this can sometimes make it a little bit more comfortable to lay on your belly, since we'll be here for a minute or so. And while you're here, I want you to feel the back body breathe now. We've done supine breathing, standing breathing, seated breathing. What does it feel like to pause and allow yourself to feel the back body breath? Can you feel the shape of your spine move? Remember, our diaphragm is connected to our lumbar spine on the front side. Can you feel how the movement of the diaphragm affects the shape of your spine? Can you feel anything down to your pelvis, your sacrum, your pelvic floor even? What's available in your breath? When you have your belly resting against the floor, sometimes with that feedback can give us a real good sensation of what the diaphragm actually feels like. So if you're one of those people that are like, I can't feel my diaphragm, I don't really know what that muscle feels like, this is a great way to practice knowing the sensation of the diaphragm moving. Even here, we can easily revert to chest breathing. So notice how easy it would be to just breathe high in your chest, to let your breath go up toward your shoulders instead of down toward your pelvis. Notice how much if you do that, if you try that, notice how much less movement you have in your pelvis and lumbar spine, and how much more tension you have in your neck and shoulders. All right, so let's go ahead and find our way to Cobra Pose. Open the chest. Exhale and melt back down. Come back up onto all fours. That was a lot of prone lying, which isn't always so easy for bodies. So feel free to swivel around in your hips, move around in your shoulders, move your rib cage, anything that feels good in your body. So you just want to release tension patterns. All right, and then as you're ready, find your way back to dog pose. One more time, enjoy the diaphragm. Finding its way back into that dome. Feel the resistance to move away from gravity. That might give you some sensation in your diaphragm too. Okay, let's walk your feet forward. Come into Uttanasana, bend your knees. Inhale for a halfway lift. And then relax, and we're going to take our legs wide. So turn sideways on your mat. Come into a wide-legged stance. And let's flow just a little bit through some standing poses. So let's go ahead and find Virabhadrasana. So of course, we haven't done much with our hips. So feel free to have a little bit of mobility, just kind of coming back and forth if you know that it's tricky for your hips or your knees to find a standing pose. And then when you're ready, if you're able, bring your arms out to the sides. So when you do this, can you imagine that your lungs and your ribs are a boat for your shoulders and your neck to rest on? So what does it feel like to support with your organs? Can you feel that your lungs are supporting your neck and shoulders instead of your neck and shoulders trying to manipulate your lungs? Reverse that so you can relax. You can relax your neck and shoulders. Can you feel your rib cage move out in all directions? Is there a capacity for you to do that whoo exhale? Can you feel a slight tissue lifting up in your pelvic floor on your exhales? Can you let everything expand on the inhales? And then when you're ready, stretch into reverse warrior. Reach up, open the rib cage. Maybe if you want to straighten your leg for a moment, you can. And then come back into Parsvakonasana and stretch your other arm over. And once again, go where your body finds breath. Go where your body finds breath. Maybe you're higher, maybe your hands are down, maybe you're less deep or more deep, supported, less supported. Find what gives you the capacity to move that 360 cylinder of your rib cage. The diaphragm moves. The organs are displaced a little bit. The who breath helps you condense on your exhales. Are you breathing through your nose? Is your exhale just a little longer than your inhale? Can you feel the roots root into your feet to give you the rebound of length through your spine? Come on up and let's turn our feet to the other side. Okay, it's turning the toe out. Take a deep breath. You feel free to move, have a little bit of mobility in your hip. Maybe your hip or your knee needs a little support, so you just do you. Okay, find what feels good. And then once you're ready, remember, if your pelvis is turning, your chest is turning too. So the pose might end up looking like this instead of like this, and that's okay. Let your crown be over your tail. Let your shoulders be in line with your hips. Once you get into the position of wherever you are, can you feel your shoulders and your neck relax upon your lungs? Let the lungs be like, on the swell of the ocean where there's a rise and there's a fall, but it's still this buoyancy, like a little boat, a little buoy. What's available to help you relax your shoulders and not feel like your puppet strings from your ears to your shoulders? Let's find our way into a reverse warrior. Open the rib cage up, breathe well here. And then come back down into Parsvakonasana and feel the expansion of that whole sideline. The rib cage is opening. The side of your pelvis is opening. Reach into your hand, reach into your foot. Find that full line. How's your breath now? Can you relax your neck and shoulders? Let's go ahead and come back up. Feet are wide. Bring your hands down to blocks or floor. When our legs are wider, our bellies soften more usually. We have a little more space, a little more displaced space for our organs to move. So try putting your hands on blocks, even if you can go to the floor, so that you have that tabletop feeling in your spine. And once again, relax your belly. What does it feel like to completely let your belly go? And then start to feel the movement of the diaphragm here. All right, heel till your feet in. Come into Uttanasana. Bend your knees a lot. Relax your spine. Swivel your hips or your head, whatever feels good. Breathing well. We're going to come down onto our backs. We're going to do two, chest and pelvic opener. Most of you have done this with me before. You can roll either one blanket or two blankets into a round bolster. Two blankets obviously is going to be twice as high as one blanket, so decide where you're going to be. And then we're going to start with this between our shoulder blades. Now, if you have a tendency to push your floating ribs up and out, and that kind of is your pattern of trying to get low in your rib cage, see what you can do to let this pose be more about just opening up the spine and the ribs rather than trying to push away from the bolster. So we're starting with this underneath our shoulder blades, and we can do anything we want with our arms. You can cactus your arms if your subscaps are not flexible enough for that and your hands are hanging in the air. Put your arms out like a T, or put your arms down at your sides, or cross them over your chest. Sometimes it feels nice to cross your hands to an opposite shoulder and then lift your forearms to rest on your face. There's lots of different ways for you to try to open up your rib cage here. Once you get your arms settled, once again, try not to pull away from the bolster and just feel that 360 cylinder of your rib cage move. We don't have time to do this today, but for those of you who have worked with me before and done the kitchen towel roll with the 3 rubber bands and we rock on it, that is a wonderful exercise to help free up the attachments, the spine and the ribs, which are so necessary for a good mobility of breath. So doing that on a consistent basis is a really good thing. Let's walk this down so it's at the very bottom edge of our shoulder blades, still supported by rib cage. Once again, if you're a rib flare, a bottom rib flare, see if you can let the other parts of your ribs share in that joy. So we're not just overexpanding the front bottom ribs, but we're feeling the back, feeling the sides. Try not to chest breathe. We're not trying to lift up. We're trying to relax. Don't worry so much about where your breath has to go, but try not to bring it up toward your shoulders. See if you can just let the breath, the diaphragm move naturally. All right, and then the last position we're going to take here is to move the bolster all the way down so it's underneath our pelvis. And you can switch this out for a block if you'd rather have a block under your pelvis, you decide. And if you're able to straighten your legs, great. If your low back's like, hell no, then you get to bend your knees and be in a more neutral pelvis for this very low bridge pose. So you can also try one leg at a time, bend one knee, other straight. So decide. And know that, you know, all this, the psoas muscle, which you're stretching right now, remember the relationship with the diaphragm. Remember the relationship with the deep, low belly. Breathe. If you shun your belly, if you have, you know, if you just ignore your belly or don't like your belly, see what you can do to befriend the sensation that you're feeling right now of letting the softness of your belly rise and fall. All right, and then to counteract the back bending, keep your pelvis on the bolster, whether it's a block or a blanket, and bring your knees to your chest. Take a deep breath. Feel the back body stretch a little bit. See if you can get that space between the bottom ribs and the pelvis to open up and broaden with the inhales. And then go ahead and relax your legs, lift up the blanket or lift up the hips and get rid of the blanket or the block. Let's bring our knees back to our chest, rock a little bit from side to side. And then we're going to take a twist. So feet down onto the ground, lift your hips, scoot them right, knees up, drop them left. You can always put a block under your shins. See what it feels like to let this be, of course, it's a spinal twist. So, you know, you'll feel the twisting action on the spine. But see if you can if you're twisting with your knees to the left, enjoy all the spaciousness in your right lungs. And then come back up, feet onto the ground, neutral pelvis, neutral pelvis. Take a breath there. Feel your pelvic floor, your diaphragm working together, maybe a who breath. Feel your diaphragms. And then let's scoot to our hips to the left, our knees drop right. Breathe your way here. And once again, support underneath your knees if you need it, or underneath your shins. You can grab a blanket or a block if you want to go less deep in the posture so that your chest can expand more. Can you feel your diaphragm? Now that you're twisting, it's hard to have your organs move, right? There's some counter resistance. So can you feel the action of your diaphragm moving into the twist? Trying to displace your organs, even though you're not in a neutral place. Our organs love this. You know, when we have this massage on our internal organs, it can very much help with keeping things working well in our bellies. Go ahead and put your feet back down on the ground, pelvis neutral, and come into happy baby pose. Just stretch your spine if you need that. And feel free to rock a little bit, just opening up the lumbar spine. Stay in the breath. Knees are really wide so you can still be breathing well. All right, and then relax. So we're going to, you have two choices for a wide-legged, supported breath posture. So either, let me get my bolster, either take a bolster for a supported child's pose, and you can get as much height underneath you as you want. And I would suggest moving the bolster to just be underneath your sternum so that your belly still has room to move. Or come into Supta Baddha Konasana with no support underneath you, some support underneath you, whatever you have. Most importantly, we're supporting under our knees. Okay, so I want the pelvis to feel broad and wide for you. And then decide, do you want supine breathing or prone breathing? The key here is to support yourself. So if you're in Supta Baddha Konasana, which is like just about everybody's favorite pose practically, if you are in that posture, make sure you are supported. If you have the luxury of props and can prop your back up on a ramp and support underneath your knees, great. If you don't have enough props, support underneath your knees and lie flat on your back. If you're in child's pose, have any support, any height. You can have some blankets underneath your buttocks on top of your heels. You can ramp up the bolster to be higher. Whatever support you need to just experience the beauty and joy of an open body breathing. An open body breathing. Can you let go of all the musts and shoulds? Can you just feel the natural nature of healthy breath? What a gift it is to be able to breathe with ease. If you've ever had trouble breathing for whatever reason in your life, everyone knows the feeling of this incredible sensation of an easy breath. So let's really hold deep gratitude. Let your body receive. Make yourself an open door for the breath to come visit. And just as easily, letting the breath go. Is there any tension that you can take away? Telling the nervous system all is well. Letting the parasympathetic system teach the diaphragm, the psoas, the TA, the back muscles, everything to just relax. At any moment, you can turn this pose into Shavasana. You can also stay right where you are for as long as you want. If you're choosing to move into Shavasana, settle yourself in a position that is filled with ease. So maybe some support under your knees, maybe support under your head, whatever it is that you need. Let the body come into deep, deep rest. Let's begin to deepen our breathing again. What does that mean to you to deepen your breath? Do you immediately go for a high top breath? How can you feel the fullness of your ribs, the fullness of the movement of your diaphragm? Let's find some movement. Eventually finding your way to your side. Go ahead and use your arms. Help yourself upright. Let's bring our hands to our heart once you get comfortable. And once again, just come into the flow. We make ourselves, we open the door for the breath. We make ourselves worthy of the breath by being free, okay, by not binding. So as you feel this within yourself and you feel the connection, the energy connection of prana, allow your intentions, your care for someone else, your prayer for someone else to ride on that pranic energy. So even on the breath, you can send your love. Namaste. Thank you, everyone.